They sang the same song, but in a very different time.
We shall overcome the sun.
That's right, thousands jammed the National Mall Saturday to mark the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. Demonstrators heard from Attorney General Eric Holder, Congressman John Lewis, and two of Martin Luther King Jr.'s children.
Lewis, who spoke at the original event in 1963, called for a renewed fight for voting rights. And Cornel West watched the March on Washington on TV in 1963. He was a 10-year-old boy in a segregated America.
And today, he's a professor of philosophy and Christian practice at Union Theological Seminary. He joins us now from Washington. Professor West, what's the biggest challenge now facing the civil rights movement today?
I think the biggest challenge actually has to do with the three crimes that Martin Luther King Jr. would want us to face. Wall Street crimes, unpunished, new Jim Crow, bogus war on drugs tied to poverty, still not fully addressed, even though Eric Holder's beginning to. And then the third, of course, are war crimes, the drones that drop bombs on innocent people, especially innocent children. And I would say this, that both the March, where you had magnificent waves of humanity, and the Obama administration, they have betrayed the legacy of Martin King because they haven't talked about those three crimes: Wall Street crimes, war crimes, and new Jim Crow, precious human beings, young, disproportionately black and brown, who, owing to a bogus war against drugs, have had their rights violated.
You obviously feel that there's so much farther to go when it comes to civil rights, but I wonder, do you think that the modern civil rights movement needs a figurehead? It doesn't really seem to have one.
Now, that's a good question. No, I mean, it's true. You know, Brother Al Sharpton, we witnessed yesterday the coronation of our dear brother Al Sharpton as the head house Negro on the Obama plantation. And what I mean by that is, given the kind of MSNBC production, it was almost kind of Obama propaganda in a certain sense. He's elevated in that way, but it's clear he's no Martin Luther King Jr. We pray for the good that he does and criticize the bad that he does. But most importantly, we need an awakening of young people. We have to keep in mind that Martin Luther King Jr., you know, he called Malcolm X in June 27th, 1964. We have it on the FBI files. He said, together, Malcolm, we need to go to the UN to put the United States on trial for the violation of human rights of black folk here and Africans. And that's very serious, radical business. We didn't see that kind of radical Martin, that titan of love, that drum major for justice, that militant for tenderness, that subversive for sweetness, that radical for tenderness. That's the Martin that we need to focus on, tied to Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, and the others.
Dr. West, I'd like to cite a statistic here. There's a new Pew survey out that finds 70% of African Americans feel they're treated unfairly when dealing with the police. Now, we may have expected that 50 years ago in 1963. Would you have expected those kinds of numbers today?
Not really. I mean, it's very sad. And I mean, we need more white brothers and sisters. Of course, we've got our brown brothers and sisters, high levels of deportation. I think that's wrong as well, coming out of the Obama administration. But we need to recognize the criminal justice system is not fair, especially as it relates to poor people of all colors, and especially as it relates to black and brown youth. We see the stop and frisk in New York. We're seeing progress on that thanks to the judge and the courts. But we need a whole lot more focus, making the connection. If we are going to survive as a democratic experiment, we cannot be indifferent to criminality. We can't be callous to catastrophe. We have to have courage to tell the truth. Martin Luther King Jr. was tied to the kingdom of truth. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, tied to the kingdom of truth. And the condition of truth is always to allow suffering to speak.
What do you think, Dr. West? And I know we just heard you be critical of the Obama administration, but what do you think Dr. King would have said if he knew that there was an African-American president leading the country?
Martin Luther King Jr. would say, I will not judge a president or any politician by the color of his skin, but by the content of his policies. And if those policies tilt toward Wall Street, not Main Street, if they tilt toward the 1% as opposed to everyday people of all colors, beginning with the least of these. He was a Christian minister. He leaned on the same Jesus that I do. And you begin with the least of these, the poor, the weak, the vulnerable. So Martin Luther King Jr. would not be obsessed with the color of the president. He would say there's progress, but I want to know what's the content of his policy. I'm not obsessed with the color of his skin. What kind of human being is he? Will he take a stand? And does he love poor people? Does he love black people? And will he give poor and those who are on the edges priority? That's the kind of brother my brother Martin Luther King Jr. was. That's why I love him so, and he loved us so. He loved you, Sister Brianna. He loved you, Brother Ivan, too.
And Dr. West, we told our viewers that you would come with your opinions, and you certainly did. Thank you so much for being with us.
Stay strong, you all.